Hi, my name is Marshall, and this is Waveform. There's one thing that's absolutely certain about the new Modern Warfare game. The weapon sounds are superb. Today, I want to break down why the sound designers have gotten so much praise on the internet for Modern Warfare, show you some do's and don'ts for making a mean sounding gun, and at the end of the episode, we'll use those techniques one layer at a time to make our own version of a gunshot design inspired by the latest Modern Warfare game. We haven't done a listening challenge in a while, so let's start with one. First-person shooters need guns that sound good, no question about that. But there's a lot of other sounds playing here besides the gunfire that make the experience as satisfying as it is. I'm going to play a clip of some gameplay a few times through. Listen closely and try to list all the things that you hear. Sounds, mix changes, effects, anything that comes to mind. Ready? Here we go.
HQ active. Move to secure. HQ active. Move to secure. HQ active. Move to secure.
What did you hear? Well, first of all, there's the gunshot itself, but there were also hit markers, a kill confirm notifier, reload sounds, bullet whiz-bys, bullet shells falling to the ground, movement sounds bringing the gun up to your line of sight and back down, dynamic changes in the volume of the weapon itself over time, and reverb on all these sounds to put them into a space. Within each of these layers are tons of choices to make in our design that all impact the way the player feels when they experience the core gameplay loop. Even something as simple as the sounds of the bullet shells hitting the ground can be deceptively complex to implement into a game like Call of Duty. What surface is your player standing on? Shallow water, wood, dirt? Maybe they're not even standing at all. Maybe they're in midair. What type of ammunition does the weapon use? Did the player move since they fired the shots? All these variables need to be considered when designing a sound like this one. But this episode, I'd rather focus on the three elements that are the most interesting to me: the gunshot, the hit markers, and the kill confirm notification. If you'd like to see an hour-long video lesson of the full session and explanations of all the layers in the gunshot design that we'll be doing later in the episode, join my Patreon this month and I'll send you the link. Let's start with the hit markers. Call of Duty has always been known for their hit marker sounds. These are the sounds that let the player know when they're damaging an enemy. It's a win-win. It gives the player more gameplay information and also makes connecting with your shots much more satisfying. Different games have always tackled this problem with different sounds. Overwatch, for example, uses the sound of a beer can opening for their hit markers. Battlefield used to use a subtle hollow zippering sound, which I loved. Then there's the classic Call of Duty hit marker. The new hit marker used in Modern Warfare. And I also had to make one too, just for fun. I used some white noise and a kick drum sample to make this. We'll use it later in our redesign. If you compare the old Call of Duty hit marker to the new one is a bit more visceral and realistic than the old. It gives the gunplay less of an arcade feeling because the sound is more rooted in reality than it was before. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a bullet impact sound, and 10 being a design notification sound, I'd say the old hit marker was about a 9, and the new one's about a 4. I like this creative choice a lot. It really adds a lot of depth to the gunplay. They've also taken their reload sounds in a similar direction, focusing more on realistic, unaltered samples. These small things all lend more realism and authenticity to the gunshot itself. Now let's talk about the sound that follows the hit marker sounds, the kill confirm notification. This sound is generally metallic or high-pitched in most first-person shooters, and that's because it has to cut through the mix. It's one of the only sounds that's guaranteed to be playing over constant gunfire, which means in order to be heard, it has to be sharp and attention-grabbing. The kill confirm notification sound in Call of Duty is like lemon juice on fish. You know, you just need that little kind of, Another notch! You know what I mean. There's also another popular way to make things stand out in a game mix called sidechain compression or ducking. Basically what that does is say that whenever important sounds are playing, reduce the volume of less important sounds by this much. It actually is the same effect that music producers use to get that suction effect on their bass and drums. I used a low explosion sound, a metallic clang, and some wind sounds to make a notifier for our Call of Duty recreation. Check it out. Last but not least, let's talk about the actual gunshot itself. The gunshots in this game make use of the entire audio spectrum and have a very tight, punchy, controlled feeling. We can't be sure exactly how many layers were used in this particular weapon, but usually guns can be broken down into 4 audio components: the close layer, a mechanical layer, a sub-bass layer, and a distant layer or tail. The tail is something that in a game you can swap out dynamically based on where the player is standing to add detail to the environment. For example, if you're under a bridge, we could play this tail sound. And then when you walk out into an open field, we could swap it for this one. All these decisions you make when designing each layer add detail and story to the weapon you're designing. Take the mech layer, for example. How would you want the player to feel when they fire the weapon? Maybe you want them to feel like they're holding a pile of nuts and bolts strapped together with duct tape that could fall apart at any moment. Or maybe you want them to feel like they're firing expensive futuristic weapon technology. All these choices matter. When you approach a new weapon design, it's important to try your best not to jump in and start editing right away. You have to make sure that before you dive in, you have a solid understanding of what ideas, adjectives, and traits you want the gun to have. There are all sorts of tricks that sound designers can use just by adjusting the volume of each layer in a gunshot to convey even more information to the player. One thing a lot of games will do to let their player know that they're out of ammo is increase the volume of the mechanical layer in their gun as the clip gets closer and closer to being empty. Sometimes there's even a little metallic clicking sound when you fire the last shot of a magazine. Also, if you look at the audio clip from Modern Warfare, you can see that the first shots of the weapon are louder than the rest of the gun. That's a great way to make the initial onset shot feel super powerful without fatiguing the listener's ear too much if they fire the whole clip at once. Alright, now let's make our own gunshot sound inspired by the style of the new Modern Warfare game. We're going to build the clip up layer by layer and see how it comes together in the end to create a punchy, satisfying experience. SoundEffect.com was kind enough to send me the gunshot sounds that I'll be using to make our design today. This pack is called Guns, and it's by Sound Effects Monkey. There's some of my favorite weapon sounds that I've ever heard. If you'd like to check out the samples and maybe buy them for yourself, they're on sale right now at SoundEffect.com. The link will be in the description below. Throw on some good headphones and listen closely. First, we'll start with the ambience and movement sounds, and then we'll add each layer one by one. Audio deserves more credit in games in general, but especially in first-person shooters. If your gun sounds bad, then your game feels bad, no matter how good the graphics, controls, or gameplay are. Let's play the Modern Warfare beta together and listen to some sounds. If you're a patron and you want to play some Modern Warfare on PS4 with me during the beta, please feel free to message me on Patreon and I'll add you as a friend. I'll be scheduling a patron-only Modern Warfare session soon. Thanks again to A Sound Effect for sending me the Guns pack by Sound Effects Monkey to use in today's episode. It really does sound amazing. I highly recommend you go check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.